Here are some initial thoughts about sort of a minimalist level of documenting a model so that over time you don't inflict too much pain on yourself or others. First, I'd like to offer you a tip. When you create a new insight in Insight Maker and save it, you end up with a description that you typed in and a label, but the URL is still blank. You don't know what the new Insight ID number is, and to find it, you would have to go back to your models page and reopen the model. A quick way to get around that is if you go to the share option and tell it that you want to embed this web page somewhere else. It gives you the embed code, and right here in the embed code is the Insight number. So I always copy it out of here, put it up here, and reload the model. The reason I do that is because when I get done creating the model, I probably want to send the URL to somebody anyway, so then it's already here as opposed to having to go someplace else and find it. It's just a quick tip. You'll find out over time that I practice being extremely lazy in terms of I'm always looking for a shorter, more efficient, effective way to get things done. So here's a model, and I have presented this as a reinforcing loop and a balancing loop. And the reason for that is that's all there is. Any model that you create, no matter how complex or complicated it may seem, it's just a set of reinforcing and balancing loops connected together in some fashion. So I encourage people to study reinforcing loops and balancing loops because they're like protons and electrons. It's what all of the atoms are and molecules are composed of. So the way that I created the pieces, the individual items of these particular diagrams were done with picture elements. They were done with picture elements because in the next video I'm probably going to add pictures to it. So, but the thought is, you can add comments or notes, whichever you Insight Maker calls them notes, to any primitive or connection that you create within Insight Maker. So that up here you can come in and you can type, this is a note, or you can click on the down arrow and it will open an editor window, and there are a bunch of editing commands that you can use so that you can actually extend or make this note larger. And when you're finished, once you've affixed a note to something, when you mouse over it, there's a little eye that says there is a note. You can click and open it, or close it, or click over here and close it. The equal sign has to do with equations for simulation models, so don't worry about that at this point. So I said that let me get rid of this. I created these with picture elements. So I started with a picture, and then I selected this and said that I want no image, and the text for it, I then said that I wanted to align the text in the middle so it showed up in the middle. So I went through the effort of cosmetically changing the look of the picture element, but I had to go through several steps to do that, and being that I wouldn't want to do that more than once I've created one, then I'll hold down the control key and duplicate it as many times as I need it and simply change the labels in it, so it allows me to do the cosmetic changes once and use them over and over again. The same way is true with the arrows. Here I actually started with an arrow, and then I decided that I would style it to make it a solid line, and then I would go ahead and change the size of it. I think I made it 5. And then some of them I made red and some of them I made blue. The blue ones are reinforcing and the red ones are well, positive, and the red ones are negative. So once I've gone through that effort to style an arrow, I can do the same thing. I can hold down the control key, select it, and duplicate it so that I don't have to go through the effort to style it again. I can just go ahead and use it as needs be. So once I create one blue arrow, then I can duplicate it and create a red arrow. And so that it's a quick way to go about creating the model. So, oh, and in terms of, if you weren't familiar with this, the styling or the curving, if once you create an arrow, or a link in this case, if you hold down the shift key, you can put waypoints on it, which allows you to curve it as needs be for whatever connection you're trying to make. If you select it and hold down the shift key, you can take those waypoints off of it, or you can disconnect it and reconnect it, and it will get rid of all of them. So just another couple of shortcuts. Now back to the thought about actually doing the documentation. As I said, every element in a model you can affix notes to, so that what I've done is I have said for each of these, one is a bathtub, what the elements are, so that if someone mouses over it, they can go ahead and understand the thoughts that I had at the time that I did this. And this is a balancing loop, and this describes why it's a balancing loop. And this describes why the savings account is a reinforcing loop. So it says that this is the money in the savings account, this is generally the annual percentage rate, this is the interest calculated on a periodic basis and added to the savings account, which is why it's a reinforcing loop. So you try and make the images visually comfortable, something that, as opposed to just making a chaotic mess, you try and make it visually appealing and understandable, and you add comments so that it's apparent what the meaning is. Now you could also add comments to the links, or you could go ahead and change the name of the link. In other words, if a link, the default name for a link is linked. If you change it to anything else, it will display whatever it is that you changed it to. So now this says decreasing as the label that's on this link. And you might want to say at times that there's a delay associated with a particular link, so that you know that there's a delay between the time that, or when the interest is only calculated periodically. And you can also go ahead and add notes to links. There's a shortcut doing Control period to open the note editor. This is a note on a link, and apply it, so that when you mouse over the link, it actually shows the little eye, so you can open that. Okay? So the idea is that you can document, you can add explanatory text to any element on the model that you choose to. And as I've said repeatedly, it's amazing to me the amount of things that I don't remember about a model 6 months or a year later when I go back to look at it. So if I'm creating a one-off and I'm just going to throw it away, it doesn't matter. If I'm creating it to figure out something for myself and I'm going to save it for reference, I probably should document my thoughts so that I don't actually hurt myself. So when I refer to it later, I understand what I figured out the last time. And in terms of these two just being a simple balancing and reinforcing loop, well, they're easy to figure out. Most models are more complex than this, and some of the ones that we cover before we finish this program, you'll begin to understand why it's extremely important to add comments, notes to the various and sundry elements so that as reference for later. So this is what I consider a very basic level of documentation. You want to identify what it is that the loop is about and go ahead and identify whether they're balancing and reinforcing loops and define the interactions. So hope you have found this informative, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.